It is now my great pleasure to welcome our final guest for the morning, the incredible Peninsula-born actor and theatre maker Luce Wirthensohn. And Luce is here to talk to us about her new show Picture This, which is launching next week at the Broadway Theatre in Rosebud. Welcome, Luce.
Hey, glad to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm so fascinated by this project, by this physical space, by lots of things about this. So let's get right into it. You've beautifully described the Broadway Theatre as a building that seems to hold its breath, waiting for someone to notice it's alive. What a gorgeous description. So before we kind of jump into talking about the show, I'd love to know from you as someone who was born on the Peninsula, originally from there, what does that theatre mean to you? It's a 90-year-old theatre that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
What sort of role has that played for you personally?
It's such a beautiful building, and it's sort of like a little bit tucked away. Like, it's not quite on the main street. It's a little bit around a corner. And for a really long time, it was a vintage bazaar that held like a lot of really cool clothing pieces and vintage sort of knickknacks and like antique pieces. And I had a personal connection with it because my really close friend was the son of the previous owner, Helen. And it was just like a place that we would go and hang out and look at all of the cool things that they had on show there. But it's really interesting. It's since been redeveloped and sort of like been emptied, and that stuff has moved into further up into Rosebud. But now it's like, it's this building that used to have all these things that would draw your focus, like these clothing items and these antique pieces. But now that they're gone, it's just this massive empty hole with these like beautiful Art Deco fan architecture and this like proscenium arch with the original text that says the Broadway in gold lettering, and like, it's just stunning to look at. It's being redeveloped by an artist collective called Barnacle Studios. So that's Sally Ballew and Max Johnson. And they're redeveloping the Broadway to turn it into like a local arts hub and like making that theatre alive again, which is just incredible. And they've been such a support. It's awesome.
Yeah, wow. It's so, like I said, it blows my mind that this little gem was there hiding away on the peninsula all this time, and how exciting to get to breathe some new life into it. So Picture This is the show that you've got coming up at the Broadway Theatre, and it's not traditional theatre. Audiences are invited to move, to stand, even dance as the story sort of unfolds around them. What is it about this production that lent itself to this more immersive kind of experience?
Yeah, so it's a immersive, historical, site-specific piece of theatre, which is just like a lot of things to hold at once. But I thought like the idea was that like, how do we make the space as alive as we can and bring the community in to see it and have them feel welcome to sort of look around at things and really take it in while they're also watching the performance. And so we had this idea that like we could have the actors, in period costumes playing these like multiple characters, and moving around the space and like being in different parts of the space, so they can go see that corner and those projection boxes, and they can go to the stage and see the proscenium arch, and like sort of like letting them really look around at it and experience a bit of the history of the building through the actual narrative itself, which has been so fun to play with. It's been really like, it's kind of shaken me up a little bit because it's not, like front-facing theatre. So you've got to know that you're in the round. So you've got to play to sort of everyone around you, and you've got to lead them through almost like a tour guide sort of thing. But you're still in character. So yeah, it's just been really interesting, really fun.
And I mean, place obviously always has an important role to play in theatre, but it feels to me like in this case it's a real sort of conversation back and forth sort of between you and the space that you're inhabiting.
Yeah, it all started there. So the idea was that we would have multiple characters from multiple different time periods, and the only thing that sort of pulls them and anchors them together is the place. And yeah, it was really interesting to get like, it's a piece of theatre that's gone from accounts of real like residents on the peninsula and people who have told us their stories about the Broadway and about growing up in Rosebud in general, but also like what it was like to be in a meeting place like a theatre, which is like the socially acceptable place where people go and listen to stories being told, and like what a fantastic thing that is. And yeah, it's just been really, really interesting to hear all of the different conversations from all of the different time periods, and then to pull it down to this spot and place in time.
Could you tell me a bit about that process of talking to people about their experiences and how you kind of went about that and then went about sort of knitting it into the show?
Yeah, we had a lot of people come to contribute when we started to talk about what we were doing. A lot of people came in to visit the Broadway and Max and Sally and were giving them these stories, and then Max and Sally would pass them on to us in our meetings. And then we also went and actually spoke to specific people. We spoke to this wonderful man called Phil Virtue who lives in McRae, and he told us these accounts of like his memories of being in the theatre with his family in the 40s, and like all of like the sort of cultural, societal practices that are very different now. And also we got to speak to Trish Lucina, who has also given us a lot of really like funny little stories. There's a lot of like notorious characters that everyone remembers. One of them was Mick Dunk, who was this security guard who like lived and died by his work. And we heard this story about how someone who was like sneaking into the theatre trying to get in without a ticket would be thrown off the pier, the Rosebud Pier at Jetty Road, and by Mick Dunk, which I thought that was so funny and such like a theatrical and dramatic thing. And at the same time, a real story that maybe some people who come to see this show will remember and be like, oh my God, that's a true thing.
Yeah. I love drawing on this sort of idea of like local lore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like how things that people talk about and the rumours sort of get exasperated and dramatised, but everyone remembers these little things, these local legends, and like kind of putting them together in this collage of things, but still making it like a streamlined narrative that's in character and that people can follow, was really important to me. Yeah.
And so the show does move through decades from sort of wartime dances and 60s swing and we say local heroes.
Yeah.
How did you make your decisions about which stories to include so you could make sure you kind of have that through line when you're playing in a lot of really different eras and spaces?
Yeah, I had the thought that like it would be kind of easy to do like a collage work that is a bit more abstract, a bit more like things don't have to relate to each other and they can exist at random times. But then I thought like it would be a really interesting challenge to write something that is like a canonized story that follows a narrative that is linear. And so it's kind of the actors play multiple characters and they are telling stories in to each other. And so there might be in a scene where they're talking about a rumor that they heard, and that's how we hear that random little tidbit. And then like there might be something that's actually centered around one of these local sort of legends. And it was a really interesting challenge to keep it all in the right context. Just really good. So much to work with.
Yeah, it feels like a huge writing challenge, like a challenge in a good way. I imagine it would involve a lot of like Post-its. And string, you know. Drafts and drafts.
Yeah.
And talking about place, I know another really important part of the show was your collaboration with, Bunurong and Palawa cultural educator Gillian West. So her work appears there through film. Could you talk to me a little bit about how you sort of went about including Indigenous perspectives in telling the story of this place?
Yeah, so once we sort of figured out that what we wanted to do was tell a story of place historically, it became really important to me that we represent a First Nations perspective. Because I think that when you do historical work about Australia and you don't include that perspective, it's like telling 1% of the history.
Yeah.
We reached out to Gillian West, who's a cultural educator, Bunurong Palawa woman, and she had done this interview. It's on the In Her Words podcast, which was emceed by Tracy Hutchinson. Bit of royalty around here.
Yeah.
I reached out to Gillian to ask if we could borrow that interview and have it projected onto the screen. So at the end of the show, after all of the characters have sort of been in the space with the audience. The audience is invited to sit in front of a big screen, and we project onto it. And it's sort of like it's being set up like they're going to the cinema to watch a film. And then the film that plays is actually there's a short drawn animation by Sol Ackenster, who's a local stop motion animator from the Peninsula. And that plays as like the cartoon shorts that happen first. And then the film that they're watching is Jill West's story and her account of basically what it has been like to live as a Bunurong woman on the Peninsula and to be a cultural educator, and what that means to her and what that should mean to everyone. And it's also paired with these visuals by this local videographer, Stefan Rabe, who has these beautiful visuals of Bunurong country from the coast and like the Bushrangers Bay and like all of these beautiful shots. And we also got some music from Lionel Loach, who's like also a local cultural educator on Bunurong land, and it's really nice to see it all come together.
Were there things that you learnt from that collaboration and from that First Nations perspective about storytelling in general and about storytelling in place?
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about was like if we wanted to get really abstract about it, is like we're talking about a meeting place where it's encouraged for people to tell stories, and how like historically that has followed on through thousands of years of Bunurong history. And it hasn't been in that building, it's been on country. But it's really interesting to delve into that perspective. To not speak on behalf of that perspective is really important. To not like, grab the mic and be like, let me tell you about it, as like a white Australian. And to allow a platform for that to be spoken about. And also for like, it's funny, we've got the animation before it goes into the film, and the animation is of the actual building itself, the Broadway, crumbling down into oyster shells, and then grass grows over it, and then like eucalyptus and like a kookaburra grows on it, which is a spirit animal of Jill West's father, who's really important to her. And that transitions into the film. So it was kind of, the idea was like, yeah, we're talking about this building, we're talking about this meeting place, but if it crumbled down to nothing, the country underneath has been telling stories for thousands of years before that. And like, yeah, that was kind of like the image that I really wanted to come through.
Super powerful. It sort of strikes me that the show is happening alongside the theatre's broader revitalisation. And so you've got this really kind of beautiful duality of having one foot in the past and telling these stories in this beautiful old building, and then one foot in the future of creating this kind of new space, this revitalisation, not just of the building, but presumably an arts culture on the peninsula, that it may become a bit of a kind of hub. How does it feel to kind of be walking into time zones at the same time?
Yeah. It's really cool. I think as someone who grew up on the peninsula and then wanted to follow the arts but found like a very small pool of outlets to follow it on the peninsula, and then I moved to the city to study it, and then I came back. And it's sort of like, yeah, seeing that the culture around arts and around theatre down there is like quite small, but the people who are involved there care so much. Like they are really holding it all on their backs, and they are trying to keep it as alive as they can, even with like recent sort of budget cuts and things that have made things a bit more difficult in that sector. It's the resilience is really amazing to see. And I think, art in regional spaces has always been there. It will always continue to be there because arts is in every sort of space, I feel. And like, even with all those restrictions, even with all those things in the way, it will just persist. And that's one of the biggest things I found, is just like how willing people are to jump into this project because they see the value in it, and they're like, no, I want to see this happen, which is awesome. Just had so many people contribute. Had some young actors from Dreamhouse Theatre Company, Mayla Dillon, Max Howes, Noah Zorzi, and Carol Petula, who's the director of Dreamhouse Theatre, which is this theatre company on the peninsula that's been going for years. I was a student in that theatre company.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it just feels like a really tight community of people who want to see it happen. And that's really been like such a great support.
And how does it feel for you returning to the peninsula after spending some time in the big smoke?
Yeah.
And, and reconnecting with people, where you potentially got your start, or that ignited your love of theatre and the arts. How has that move been for you?
Yeah, it's been cool. I mean, I've been away for like 8-something years. I moved out when I was 16 and I kept staying out in share houses and then lockdown and la, la, la. But to come back and to be reintegrated into the nature of the place, which has since grown, and the sort of like communities there that have like sort of shifted but more or less stayed, it's been really, really great. And I had a little bit of a fear around it. I was like, oh, what if it's so different that I feel like I'm not welcome or I can't settle? But then, no, I had nothing to worry about. Like, it is such a beautiful community down there, and it's also just such a beautiful, like, place to visit, just to see the nature of it, like the bushwalks in the bay, and it's just, God, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, and I guess doing something that is so rooted in community has got to be helpful for that kind of reintegration, I suppose.
Yeah. We one thing that comes to mind with that is just that we had like a few people from the Village Glen, which is the elderly home that's in down on the peninsula, reaching out, and they were so eager to talk to us and tell us these stories, and I wanted to try to get them to come and see it. It's like kind of a hard logistical thing, because like in order for them to leave, they have to get a shuttle, and then we have to organize like that as an activity in their program. But if we ever do the show again, it is 100% something that I would want to do, is just to get them to see it.
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there's obviously so much love in this project for place, for people, for memories. There's also a real sense of responsibility that I'm hearing from you. And how have you and the team gone about holding that responsibility while still making something that is playful and alive and fun?
Yeah, it's actually, we were just talking about this. We were just talking about this in the car, about how like the many hats that you have to wear when you are an independent artist who's trying to do it all. I think that like in terms of theatre, which is kind of the only perspective I can grab from, is like you have to be a director and you have to be a writer and you have to be devising, but then you have to push that all aside and you have to be an actor and you have to be present and in the moment with all of the things that you've got going, and then you have to do the scheduling and the socials and like sort of see it from a third perspective but also a first perspective. And as you say, to keep it light and playful at the same time, and to switch into jester mode when you got to be a bit of that, is just it's a really interesting thing. I think this is sort of out of left field, but I've got ADHD, and I find that is like really a bit of a superpower in that way, because I think I can switch gears pretty quickly and dive into those gears. But I think my challenge is that I get lost in that rabbit hole.
Yeah, sure.
And so I got to have someone on the side. I got to have someone on the side to have the little stage hook to pull me back in. But yeah, it's been, I think it would be, what's great about what we're doing now is it's our theatre company, which is called Forget Me Not Theatre Company. We just started it, and picture this as the first show that we're doing through the company. It's really nice to see, like, I guess, like a proof of concept, like can we do this? Can we make it work within a certain budget? And who do we want to work with, and how do we interact with those people? And one of the things that we spoke about was, like, as a theatre company, I would really, as a part of our arts practice, like to pay our artists their worth and their time, because I have done a lot of independent work now, and it has been the biggest challenge is like how you sacrifice so much of your time that you could be doing with your another job, perhaps like a hospital job for me, and you're kind of losing money by doing it, but you do it because you love it, and you do it because it's really fulfilling. But luckily for us, we actually got a grant approved by Bendigo Bank through a community sort of fund, and it was their whole team was like so supportive the entire time. All of the application process was like real, like they were talking to us the whole way, which was really awesome because they really wanted to see it come off the ground. And so a big part of that has been like allocating, okay, we need to make sure that we can put on the show, logistically speaking, and pay for set and props and all those things. But like a massive part of the funds that we have is just going into how do we pay everyone who's contributed in a way that where they walk away and they feel like, okay, that was really, I not worth it because it's always kind of going to be worth
Yeah.
it, but like I got something more out of that than just the privilege of being able to show my art.
Yeah. And may I say, on behalf of all artists, hell yeah. Thank you, Luce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's survive out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Luce, thank you so much for chatting with me on SmartArts this morning. The show is called Picture This. It is showing at the Broadway Theatre in Rosebud. It launches next week.
Yeah, the runtime is from the 14th of January to the 20th. And if you're in Nam, come down for a day trip, go to the beach and come see the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Luce Wirthensohn, thank you so much for chatting to us on Triple R today.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.